been playing over in my spirit. And it is that even if he don't faith, with the understanding that he will. And I've been thinking of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego all day today, and that they stood on a promise
Yes.
that even if he didn't, they knew that he would, and it was done. And the
Yeah.
beautiful part of that story is when they came out, they did not even smell like fire or smoke, not a
Hallelujah.
hinge,
Yeah.
not a hair was singed. And as we're talking about love and we're talking about
Yes.
walking through these broken places and these wounded places, because I see we're recording again, so I'm going to shift. When we're talking about walking through those desolate places, we know that we can come out on the other end, not even smelling like the fire that we passed through, that
Yeah.
nothing about us will be singed because we've trusted in love as we passed through. And
Absolutely.
so I am encouraged by that thought because it's been with me um, since I woke up this morning. That
Praise
if
God.
we have that, even if
Mm.
he don't kind of faith, he steps in
He
and
steps in.
does.
Yes.
And he just needs us to trust him even if he don't. He will, but do we trust him like Abraham trusted him to lift that knife to that son that he knew he couldn't go back and make another one with Sarah?
Come on,
And
brother.
yet and still he knew that no matter what happened, he and his son were coming back down off that mountain. And so I see that record button, so we're gonna keep on
No,
going.
it's okay because
Uh,
this is all about love. Love is,
yes,
this covers for me to even ask this in the middle of something
yes,
that's going on. I knew that if I couldn't get a prayer up, I know I got some
yeah,
of the best prayer warriors, and the people that were in the chat were saying and
yes,
touching, agreeing with us. This is the right
yes,
group of people at the right
yes,
time. And somebody in the chat said we're two or more gathered, so
yes,
three. So
yes,
this is where we are. So whatever you need to say, this is part of
yeah.
our process. So
But I think this is what I felt coming in. I just felt so
Yeah,
powerfully that
yeah.
we were standing on holy ground. And as we were talking, it was just, I was doing everything I could to hold it together over here because it was just this amazing presence of the Father. And it just so overwhelmed me
You
when
said,
you first started. And I couldn't comprehend, it didn't fit what we
mm,
were talking about, what I was experiencing and what I was feeling was about to take place. But then when you hit that stop and you explained it, then it made sense because
makes sense.
we needed to be together for this.
Yes. Isn't that something?
Yes.
Transforming power is what you talked about.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Transforming.
Absolutely.
That
Absolutely.
something
Transformative.
magic was happening.
The
Right there.
yes,
Miraculous.
magical and miraculous.
Yes.
And the fact that it happened now,
Yes.
Yes.
and you brought us together. It
Yes.
it
Yes.
it it, it just let us all know that whatever we're going through,
Mm,
it's all in divine order.
Yes.
yes.
We were brought together divinely at this time to
Mm,
be with you, Lisa, and to be there for JL. We're here. We're a family. We're a tribe. And
yes.
and and the question I think was love. And that's it. It's gone.
love is
But
an inside job.
Inside.
love is an inside job, and as all of this was going on, what came to me was we're made in the image of God,
Yes.
Yes.
and God is love.
Yes.
And
Mm,
if we're made in His image, then we are love.
Yes.
And when we fail to allow that love to flow, as
yes.
it did with all of us just a minute ago, as we felt
Yes.
as if it was our
Hmm.
son, if it
Hmm.
was our child,
Yes.
we felt that love. We felt what Lisa felt 100%.
Hmm.
That's what love is.
Yes.
Yes.
Love is about being able to connect collectively
Yes.
You know, you think of a magnet. If a magnet gets near some other metal, it immediately does what?
Magnetized.
Attracts
Pulls
itself
into
to
it.
it.
Yes.
And this thing called loving is an inside job. It is there,
Mm-hmm.
and we just experienced it wholeheartedly.
Mm-hmm.
God have a way of giving us an example.
Yes.
And sometimes that example is not the way we expect that example to be.
Right.
Most of it.
He always has. No, it isn't. And we
That's
say, oh
right.
my goodness, that happened then?
Mm-hmm.
God, our steps are ordered.
Yes.
And sometimes he just allow us to see if this happens, how are you going to handle it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
who put this panel together? God did it.
Yes, he did.
So
Yes, he did.
yeah. So love is an inside job. Oh my God. But I'm just so thrilled that we are together
Yes.
Mhm,
and able to hold one another up
mhm.
at this time.
And when we talk about love as an inside job, for me, it means that we spend so much time, as they say, looking for love in all the wrong places.
Hmm.
You know, I won't be complete until I have. I won't
Mm.
feel that my life is until I reach. I
Yeah.
won't feel, but the beginning of that sentence starts with I.
Yep.
Mm.
Yep.
And constantly from the point that we are born, when we are first born, we have to reach outward in order to put the cry up for the mother to know that we need to eat, to put that cry up to know that we need our diaper changed, to put that cry up to know that we want to be held and we want to be held. So it's always been, we first have to reach outward for love. But part of our purpose is here is to be able, and as parents, is getting our children to the point where they can sustain themselves outside of our existence.
Mm-hmm.
We're not supposed to raise them to continuously be in need of us. And that is, and when we get to that point, but I don't think we ever get to that point. Sometimes as women, we don't get to that point that we stop looking outward.
Mm-hmm.
We're putting out that cry because I'm hurting. We're putting out that cry because, and we don't realize that part of this love is an inside job is that we have a direct connection to the creator.
Yes.
Yes.
And that direct the connection to the creator of all that is has more power than my direct connection with my husband, my soulmate, my mother,
Right.
my father, my anybody else. We stop getting that connection with God first and foremost is the most important connection that there is,
Absolutely.
because God connects us
Absolutely.
to everybody else, because God
Right.
is the person, or the creator is
Yes.
the person that they say they got the whole world in their hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that means you and me, brother, you and me, sister, the little bitty baby.
Yeah.
But if we don't connect with that source first to heal everything that's been done to us, I say this all the time, and because I'm a bid whist player.
Ah, sucky, sucky.
Suki now. That, well, let's take it to a spades level because that's easier to understand. That when people, because I know that people understand how to play spades, that sometimes your hand, the hand that you dealt is so bad that you start going, the board is at 0, and then you're supposed to be going 10, 20, 30, 40, up 100. But your hand is so bad, you start going in a negative direction. You'll be minus 10, minus 20, minus 30, minus 40. And a lot of us have started off life in the minus because we've been sexually abused, physically abused. Everything that happens to us puts us further underboard. And we spend our life, a great deal of our lives, just trying to make it to 0, just trying to get back on board. When you get it so bad in spades, you got to be at a blind 6, you got to be at a blind 7, You got to
You gotta be
double
a
up,
blind 10.
right? A blind pin, come with a Boston in order
With a Boston.
to clearly get back on board and start winning again. And that's what this connection with God is really all about. It's about getting you winning again. It's about getting you above board. It's about recognizing that I don't care what I look like on the outside.
Absolutely.
This is what I chose to take the journey in. I am the SUV model. Some of you guys, the luxury model or the sports coupe, whatever. But this is what I chose. My DNA, my makeup, my mother and father, all my ancestors, everything came into being to make me who I am. This is what I chose to take this journey in.
Yes.
And once we realize that, once we stop trying to fix stuff in order for us to be perfect enough for us to love us, that's when the real joy and the happiness begins, is because it comes from here. That it took me forever to start looking in the mirror and say, I love you.
Come on.
Because we looking at, oh girl, my hair's, my eyes, my nose too big, this, my hips too wide, this, that, and the other. We look to judge ourselves. We don't look to love ourselves. We don't get taught that early on. Your mother don't stand you. My mother didn't stand me in front of the mirror and say, love this. Yeah. I was too busy dealing with all the outside stuff that was saying that I shouldn't be loved and I couldn't be loved. And that, when I realized that, I had to get to zero, is I had to connect with the spirit, the divine source that brought me here for this purpose. And when I started living in my purpose came through writing. Yeah. When I started living in my purpose, that's when the healing began. And had all of you as part of my life to help push me towards that healing and start getting me away from that valley of condition in such a way I could start seeing myself and say, I have not given me enough love. Let me not try to bring no man, no husband, nobody into the equation, because I need enough time to love me. I had 30, 40 years of not loving. It's okay if I don't get married in this life. The thing about it is, your first love is self. Yep. And if you have not recognized that, and if you have not paid attention to self, you've been crying. You haven't been listening to your own cries.
That's right.
That you need to be fed.
That's
it. Need a diaper change.
That's it.
You don't have to wait for a parent to come along and do that at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. You can get your own bottle. You can change your own, draws, but I mean, right.
For those who wear them, yes.
Indeed. But that's
there she go again. There she go again.
I'm just saying that's what love is, an inside job is for me. And I'm going to actually turn this over first and foremost to Florenza, because she has the question, but I thought addressing the topic was first and foremost the thing that we should do. And I wanted to share this with everybody so you can know who everybody is. This is one of Florenza's books.
Yay.
And she writes children's books, as well as I have one for everybody. I was doing them while we were in before I got the message, and we got something here for Miss Janine and her new one.
Congratulations.
Well. Yeah. Isn't that beautiful?
I got you. I got one of them.
Yeah. One that we have here. I was doing these like all on, but the thing about it is, here we go.
Speak it to existence.
And it's going to be an ebook version pretty soon. Right now it's in trade paperback, but it'll be an ebook very soon. And this one here.
And it's an ebook. It's an ebook on Amazon.
Yes. I love that picture of you. You look so
I do too.
Regal.
That is nice. That's beautiful.
Regal.
Indeed, indeed. And here we go. As they say, pausing for station identification.
Right way to do the wrong thing. Not with your fast self, girl.
And And this one, I love this particular, I have several books, but I love this one the most. It says it a lot, loving me for me.
Yeah.
I love
got
this
that.
book. One of
I got that.
the title, it really owns up to it. The text, the content really owns up to that. So
Yeah.
now I'm going to, Florenza is going
Yes.
to take the lead. I've done my intros and everything, and we get to the right meat of it. And I thank everyone, all of the panelists, the attendees, for allowing that break for us to put up that prayer and that supplication to God on behalf of my son. Thank you so much. So,
Yes.
Florenza?
Yes. And the questions are for any of the panelists who would like to just jump in. One of the questions that I wanted to start off with was to define love versus lust, and where does that fit in with relationships?
Ooh.
Say
Ooh.
that again.
Ooh.
Repeat the question.
Love versus lust, and how does that fit in with relationships?
Lorenza, you said something earlier about things having to be compatible, if I recall.
Yes.
Lust says, I want it because I see it and I think it's going to be good to me and I must have it. And no matter who I have to hurt or what, lust is all of that. And lust is not asking, lust generally is going to lead to it damaging me and maybe whoever else is there, because all I'm doing is going based on my appetite. I must have this. I have to have this. I'll die without it.
Taken.
Yes. And love, on the other hand, love is looking like, so say like for love of self, you are looking out for the best of yourself. You're trying to develop the best of yourself. And then love for someone else, you are looking to add to their lives in a positive way. And by the same token, they are putting you in that same position in their lives. My goal, my desire, my greatest desire is to support you, to be there for you, to affirm you. Those things are what love will do with one another. It'll add to each other and the greatest good for the other person, but in also you're getting it for yourself, because this person is just as invested in your good. Lust is just me. I must have, I'll run over whoever to get it.
I think that when I think of lust, I think of lust as ooh-wee. Let me just have. That would be gratifying to me. And when I think of love, I think satisfying. I think of lust as gratifying.
That's powerful.
And love as satisfying. Now y'all have to know y'all have to read my book to understand all of that.
I like to chime in.
But I think we all we have it in food, we have it in clothes, we have it in sex, I gotta have that. I just gotta have that.
Yeah.
And that's gratifying for us. Well, I deserve it because he did me wrong, so I got that. Or well, I work all the time, so I should be able to spend this money. Well, I didn't eat today, so I should have this chocolate cake. That's lust or gratifying. But love is doing the right thing, and that's always satisfying.
Yes.
I would like to add to the conversation. Now, I want to say I think everything you all said is phenomenal, and I am going to come from a space that might throw you a little off. But, in my love journey, I found everything is good. In my lustfulness, I found myself asking myself when I lust something that I didn't deserve or need or want, what was going on inside of me. So I feel like
Right.
one of the things that Janet said is about her feelings. You can't heal what you can't feel. And
Come
so
on.
even when you feel
All right.
jealousy, even in your lust,
Come
see, I had
on.
to learn how to
Come
love
on.
my lust, my dark, my all. You can't just love the light and find yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna tell you the truth. In order to find the greatest version of yourself, you got to love that lust too.
Yeah.
And you got to ask yourself, why am I here? And what is it that emerges in me right now that makes me feel this way? And then heal
Yeah.
that. But if you
Yeah.
try to suppress it or repress it or act like, oh, I can't, then guess what? The best place I found myself was in the dark. I found everything that's
Yeah.
ever been born is in dark. So
Mm-hmm.
when I found
Mm-hmm.
my best version of me was in a most lustful relationship. I found the things I liked about me. I found the things that I didn't. And then I learned how to own my own voice and articulate what I wanted and didn't want. And so I'm
Mm-hmm.
grateful for my heartbreaks and for my love
Yeah.
times
Absolutely.
because it
Yeah.
Absolutely.
took me on a path that journeyed me into the true gift that I was. So I'm
Good.
going to say what the question was is how do you define any relationship? Reverend Knight said you meet no one but yourself. So if
Come
I'm
on.
only meeting myself, then I got to go inside myself and figure it all out. So
Mm-hmm.
whether it's
Mm-hmm.
lust or whether it's love or whether it's dark or light, I had to learn how to love all of me in the dark, in the light, and in the lust and in the love. And I think that's where sometimes we can be so, I heard this statement one time, we can be so heavily minded that we can be no earthly good. I
Earthly
think
good.
it's
Mm-hmm.
important that we understand and our authenticity and our authenticness that it's important to feel whatever we feel and then
Mhm.
And
honor those feelings. And then
mm-hmm.
the reason why as a transformational life coach, the reason why I have people go through letter writing is because you got to get those feelings out. See,
You
we
have
talk
to.
to
Right.
forgive. Yeah, you got to forgive, but you don't even know, you're not
What
even
you forgiven.
validating my feelings. I
That's
feel this
right.
way, and I got
That's
to
right.
honor my feelings. And then I
Yes.
can graduate into the place of forgiveness. Because other
Absolutely.
than that, I'm still going to hold on to it. And if I want to
Absolutely.
get it out of my heart, I got to feel it.
And what
So
I
I
hear
believe all
being
of that.
said, yes, and what I hear being said is, it's just like when our bodies crave something. If I
Mm-hmm.
crave salt, it's because something is
Salty in my.
deficit in me. There's a longing, there's a need. And so in that lust, it will identify, as was so beautifully said, that area in which I do need gratifying. Maybe
Mhm.
there is such a deficit. Lisa said it earlier. We can be at such a loss that we're underboard, and
Absolutely.
perhaps that lust is identifying where those voids are. But what that love will do is shore it up and satisfy it and ensure that we no longer to continue to then create a bigger void, because lust unrestrained and love uneducated, meaning, as Janine just said, we can't forget or hide or cover up or not deal with. And so sometimes we'll use love as a cloak, this band-aid that will put over areas that really do need to be surgically removed. And that in and of itself is a different form of love, to where you can go in and remove that. And so I love that answer.
So let me interject something there.
Yes, ma'am.
So we're talking when you said about lust and love, and that's a strong, very strong physical attraction. I think somebody wrote
Yes.
down there. But sometimes you can feel that so that you can move to something else. Sometimes you can be a lust for somebody and you all have a relationship, or don't even have a relationship, but it starts and you move from one place to the other. That lust moves to a
Yes.
love that, I believe that God can put somebody in your place, in your space, that you may lust after, but if you hadn't had that lust, you may not have had the opportunity to meet that
Mhm.
person so that God can work a miracle in your life. So I think we
Yes.
really have to, very much like what Janine was saying, but just a little different. We have to look at things and not always label them.
I mean, you know,
Right.
somebody comes and you say, oh God, he is super fat. I would like to meet him. And you go and you meet him and
Biblically know him.
else happens. And you have a relationship that can last for years. But it started off because that physical attraction you needed in order to make yourself meet them. And so we really have to look at what's really happening and go in and ask.
Yeah.
You know, I go in and say, okay, God, what's this about? But I think we just have to look that lust may be there to open up something else for us.
Yes.
And
Now,
that
do you feel?
So that
I think
if
the one
you're
thing
loving in yourself, you can be okay.
Yes.
But that it's your love within you.
Do you feel that eventually do you feel that a relationship could continue sustained only in a perpetual state of lust?
No, but I think that it can start there. And it can go into a loving relationship that is sustained by the love, by the commitment that you all develop, by getting to know each other, by opening up parts of each other to help boost each other. And it goes like this. It gets more balanced. And sometimes it's here, sometimes but it's a balance. It doesn't stay in lust, but it can certainly start there and open up to something bigger and better and more beautiful.
So I think the important thing that we should take away, I think the important thing that we should take away from this question, and especially because love is an inside job, if I meet no one but myself and everything I meet is me, then I think the important thing is to examine the things that we always been afraid to explore and open up those dark spaces that we've been afraid to explore. You know, like even when you start asking the questions about the vagina, you know, you should have seen the text that were coming through. These are the places that we've been afraid to explore. Why not explore? I'm really lusting in that situation. Why not explore? What is the lust? Why are you here? Like if lust came up for me, I would go, dear lust, why are you here? What are you here to teach me in this right now moment? And when we stop being afraid of our feelings, we can heal. We cannot heal until we feel. And I just want to really reiterate that in this right now moment, that we have to learn to feel what we feel, no matter what it is, and not be afraid of it and address it. And then you can deal with your wholeness.
I totally agree. It's not going to go away. I think I'm probably the oldest one of all of you, maybe. Nothing ever changes. You know, it's the same gravy, just warmed over. But
I like that.
But at the same time, you really, really have to control. I guess it's a good word. And analyze and say, what is this? You know, is this something I need to invest in, or is this something I need to disband?
Okay, so I wanted to chime in here. I wanted to chime here from the panelists. I'm not the attendees. Cheryl Lofton Booth said, lust is the initial sparks that attracts, could be carnal or spiritual, but carefree of the work needed to get to love. Also, for Shuna Higgins says, lust is an intense physical attraction. You desire your partner due to a strong sexual attraction. True love is when you value moments and experiences that they share. Lust just tends to focus mostly on the physical and outer appearance of a person. Love is different. Love is where there is friendship and mindset and connection from the heart and doesn't focus so much on the physical. I like that. And then Victoria Kennedy says, sometimes what you want can turn out to be what you need.
All right now, Victoria. I love it.
And we have a person that wants to come in, but while you get that together, Sandy, I'm going to bring you in so you've got your hand raised. I'm going to ask you to come in, but go ahead and go ahead.
So in looking at what we all just said, where does social media or entertainment fit in with our self-perception? We've talked a lot about loving self is coming from the inside, about recognizing who we are, our flaws and all. And where does social media and the entertainment industry fit in with that?
I think it has a huge influence on all of us, especially our young people. Just thinking about what Janine said. She said, whenever I didn't hear that conversation you all had when you were talking about the vagina.
It's coming up.
30 years ago, you didn't talk about the vagina. That was something you didn't talk about. Your parents taught you that. The mass media taught you that. Everything was, that's a deep, dark secret. You should not touch it, look at it, or any of that. And so that influenced us. And that influenced us so that even now, even young people have problems talking about their vagina. So it has an influence on us in that it tells people how you should look, what's beautiful, what's not beautiful, what's acceptable. And that influence how our children grow up thinking about themselves. You know, it influences us about what we think is wonderful. But in the last 10 years, they have just started, maybe a little more, saying that full figure women and making all kinds of beautiful clothes and saying full figure women are beautiful. But, you know, the mass media for so long, and still today, if you're thin, you're beautiful. If you're not, you know, there's some problem. So that I think it is such a negative influence in most cases, where people judge themselves from what the advertisers have deemed what's good. And then they get all our money because we buy into that.
Yeah.
So I think that, you know, that's why it's so important that we as moms, as aunties, as dads, that we let our children know that they're beautiful.
Absolutely.
It may not look like they're other part of their family, but they're beautiful because they're like the garden that God has created. Look at all the beautiful flowers. They don't all look alike, but they are so beautiful. And we have to really start teaching our children and accept it for ourselves, you know, that we're beautiful. As Lisa said, with the dimples on her thighs and hips, beautiful anyway. You know, but, you know, the mass media, you know, does not want our children to know that they're beautiful.
Right.
Well, I think the story we tell ourselves is the story we live. I don't think that media is the culprit. I think it's the story we tell ourselves. We have to be the example of love. We can tell. I've seen lots of kids get love. And they still don't love themselves because we're not teaching them how to love themselves. Right. Because we're not the example of what love is. If I had to raise my children over again, you know how we tell our children, brush your teeth, make sure you wash up and go. No, did you look in that mirror and do your mirror work? Come, let's do your mirror work. I am beautiful. I am amazing, because you got to keep saying it until you get to the soul essence of you. So reason that we want to say the social media is affecting it is the social media is just a reflection of the world mind. So if we're going to change what's going on in the world, we got to first change our inner self. So we got to first start, and it's multi-level. We got to first do it ourselves and then be the example of love. Be the example of what it means to teach our children how to love, not just telling them we love them, but we got to be that love. And being that love is being the example, and then watching them when they, in a loving way, explain to them, was that a loving action that you just took right there? Was that even loving to yourself? So I think that there's got to be a different conversation when we start talking about what love looks like when we're teaching love. Love first have to be the way you are, because we can tell kids all day long not to smoke, but if I smoke, they gonna smoke. If I tell my kids I love them, but I'm not being loving to myself, they're gonna do what I do, not what I say.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think we got to learn how to be what it is that we want our children to be. Our children, when we look at our children, we just looking at the fruit of the root. My grandmother used to say, it's not in the fruit, it's in the root. So we talking about the children who are very, very important. But if we want to change the fruit, we got to first change the root.
Not just our children, but children everywhere that's observing us.
Yeah.
But they're all our children. They're all our children.
We really have to be the mirror that we want them to be created into.
Right.
They have to see it in us. If it wasn't in you, you wouldn't see it in me. But we really have to allow them to see the good in us.
Yes, absolutely.
So they
I
can see
know,
the good in themselves.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
And they'll
both my
recognize.
girls are little chubby girls, and when they were younger, um, because we've lived a majority of our time outside of the U.S. My husband's military for 31 years, and 12 of those years we lived abroad. We weren't in the U.S. And my girls, they're chubby little things, but they're no, and their confidence is through the roof. And I recall the first time that someone questioned how they could be so confident when in the other person's eyes they didn't fit the stereotype of a confident individual.
Mm.
And I just recall my daughters looking at them as if they had just fallen and hit their head. Like,
What do you mean?
you're going to reduce my lusciousness to fit into a size 2? And they understood it's not about size, it's about you and your self-worth. Who do you love? And I've taught my girls to love them, to agree with the fact that when God says it is good, it's good. Now we have responsibility. I can't sit at the table and just potatoes all day long and expect that that's going to be okay. So wisdom steps in there. We do have a responsibility for wisdom, or our health is not going to follow. We can affirmation all day long, but if you're not using wisdom in there, it's going to be a disconnect. But I just appreciated watching my daughters grow into these amazing adult humans who love everything about themselves, no
Yeah.
matter what. And so, yes, media plays a role in there, but ultimately, Michael Jackson said, "Who's the man in the mirror? Like, are you in love with that person looking back at you?" When I look at my stretch marks, you know what? I call one Jessica and the other Missy, and the other 1,500 I blame on Jessica and Missy.
But you know what, Florenza? You know what's amazing about what you just said? The first time I saw you was when we did the cavalcade. And when I saw you, I said, "Oh, she reeks love. You reek beauty. You reek opulence." So how it just goes back to what I said. Those things are the things that you reek. It's just in who you are. So it's easy for your kids to know how to love themselves because that's what you exhibit. When I saw you, that's the first thing I thought about. When I saw you just sitting there listening and everything, your smile, your charm, just the way you loved yourself and just the way you move exhibit a lot of love. So it's easy for your children to know because you were the example. You was the example of what love is. See,
And
love, you're right. Love don't come in a size. Love don't come in a shape. Love comes in an emotion that we feel here inside of our heart for ourselves and for others. And when I love me, I can love you.
I just want to take 2 seconds to share how profound Janine's words are. My mother is the most powerful human I know. My mother has lived through things that I could never write about. And in all that she's gone through, from violent abuse from the time that way before she was 2 digits, and going from sexual abuse to physical abuse to emotional abuse, being severely abused by her mother to severely abused by her husband to self-abuse. I grew up as a child not knowing if I would go home from school, if my mother would be dead or alive, because suicide was such a huge part of our childhood, the attempts of suicide. But one thing she did, in her brokenness, she raised all of her children to love themselves. And so when people talk about you have to be whole in order to teach others to love, I don't always agree with that, because my mother was so shattered that it took the power of God to just put the pieces where they're supposed to be, not even together, just where they're supposed to be. The broken lines and everything is still there. But she raised powerful children. And that's only miraculous, because society says she would produce what she is.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't. But what was different about my mother was she understood the power of forgiveness. And I think, Betty, when you were speaking the last time we were in this space together, you were talking about the power of forgiveness. And every time you speak, I just smile because so if I get that stupid grin, it's because you just make me smile.
You do.
You just make me smile. But as you spoke about forgiveness, I just saw that was the soil in which I grew. And so on the topic of forgiveness, where does forgiveness fit in when we're talking about love being an inside job?
Well, since you bring it up, all of it's amazing that you went back to my mom. My mother was pregnant 14 times. She had 3 miscarriages. Well, two children died, a miscarriage, and 9 of us lived. And she didn't work. Well, she didn't have time to work. But I grew up in a household where Dad came in and hit her on the hip, and she'd say, "Stop, Johnny," and then they would get lost and
make a baby.
and go make another baby. And I grew up thinking that's the way life is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And my sisters and my brothers all have had multiple relationships and marriages because they were looking for what we saw. That was our blueprint. Mm-hmm. So because of the fact that we didn't know what went on behind closed doors, because we only saw the "Stop, Johnny, don't do that, Johnny," in front of us. And then when we did not get that, we felt, again, love is an inside job, that there was something wrong with us. Mm. So when you start talking about forgiveness, and when you're talking about your mom, I think about how many times, she may have wanted to go to work. She may have wanted to do some other things. And how many times she felt that she could not do that. She never voiced it. But as I grow older, I realized there had to be some times that she felt like, I'd like to go do something different, but I am here and this is my responsibility. So this thing of forgiving ourselves for not allowing God to use us the way we have been assigned to be used, or feeling that we're not really living our purpose, is something we have to ask for forgiveness for. Many times, if we don't do exactly what we feel, we have that burning desire, and we don't do it, then we're not really fulfilling our purpose. And I think sometimes we have to ask for forgiveness for that. And I don't know how I went on that. I guess I must have been talking to myself. But sometimes sometimes when I go off like that, I say, okay, all right. So now you know why you said that, because there are a lot of things that I keep saying that I'm going to do. And I know that until I do it, I'm not going to feel fulfilled. And so I have to forgive myself for being negligent in not fulfilling all of my purposes.
Anyone else on the power of forgiveness? Head is going like that. Yes.
Yeah, I can certainly identify with that, and like you, I wasn't expecting. I wasn't even when Florenza mentioned forgiveness. My first thought went to us forgiving someone outside of ourselves, and so I didn't even go into forgiving ourselves for when we put up our own blocks and we are not allowing ourselves to just fully bloom and blossom into who we are. And so I was, about to shake my head off. I was doing the bobblehead thing because that's me. And so even who I am, I find myself trying to work through that because I'm often in that spot. So when you said it wasn't just for you. Thank you very much. It was it was for me also. And Florenza, when you had asked about forgiveness, the first thing I thought about was in some of my counseling, we talked about forgiveness because you know how we are. Just a lot of us are taught, you know, that's the thing to do. You forgive because it frees you and you know, forgiving and all, and that has its place. But one thing that was pointed out, I remember two things about it. I remember one, Joyce Meyer saying a lot of times we are afraid of forgiveness because we're afraid that it is telling the person who harmed us that it's okay. You know, what you did is okay. But forgiveness is not about that. I remember in counseling once, I was given this analogy. If you're at a movie theater and you know when you're sitting there or at church or you know wherever there's a row of seats, and if somebody's coming past and they step on your foot, they can be oh so polite. Oh, I really didn't mean that. I'm sorry. And but if 10, 15 minutes later they're coming back by, you will pull your feet back. You forgive, but you're not going to leave yourself out there for them to hurt you that way again. And you're not holding grudges, but you have learned that this could happen. And so I need to protect myself. And I think that was one of the most important things that I learned about forgiveness, because for me, I think for whatever reason, I'm have a tendency to put everyone else's needs and importance above my own, so that I would, no matter what happened, somehow I thought that it was my place to just forgive that, you know, forgive that. And then, but when forgiving that means that then the person takes it, oh, it's okay to do this to you. Well, I didn't know how to pull myself out of that because I thought that forgiving, that was part of forgiving. And so that was a real important lesson for me to learn. Yes, I can forgive you, as in I won't hold a grudge, but no, I will not open myself up to allow you to do that again to me if I know that that is your pattern and that you're okay with doing that to me if I let you do it.
Yes. Yesterday, my husband, oh, go ahead, Janine.
Go ahead, your husband.
Yesterday, my husband and I had just at this spur of the moment decided to stop and go to a little pizzeria that we like. And of course, because of COVID, they're really doing extra measures to make sure that you're safe. So they have installed these little curtains that's behind the booths, you know. And so there were curtains behind me and curtains behind him. And then the only area was open this way. Well, there was a couple behind us that this was their first date. And we estimated that I'm 56. We estimated that they had to be maybe between 62 and 65. But this was their first date. Within the span of 15 minutes, we learned that the woman had been raped at 8, molested by the stepfather at 12, that she had been married 3 times, that 2 of the kids had died, that the mother had died. He talked about his relationships, the women that tried to trap him, the woman that was married, he almost got beat up by the husband. This all took place in 15 minutes, right? And my husband and I were sitting there and we were mortified. We were like, wow, is this what first dates are these days? What in the world? And I looked at him, I said, my husband said, whoa, they went straight for the jugular. But as I began to listen to all of what they were both saying, they both carried so much baggage that at the first time of being able to be in the presence of someone else, I just visualized them opening up the suitcase and dumping everything out. So if anything was going to scare the other person, they would be scared that moment and leave, and they would be justified to put their junk back in to their little suitcase and carry it on to the next spot. And so that leads me to this next question of,
I wanted to
go ahead, Janine.
Forgiveness before you go to your next question, if that was okay.
Absolutely.
So I love the idea that you even brought up forgiveness. And I want to just bring up Betty Clausen's and I thought she was gonna say it, but I just
I thought she was too. Go ahead, girl. Go ahead.
Forgiveness is not of the mind; it is of the heart.
It's of the heart.
And I just love, because it made me think about Albert Einstein when she said that everything is energy. Albert Einstein said everything. And Dr. Michael Beckwith said, forgiveness is the gift that we give ourselves. And I'm gonna tell you, forgiveness on my love journey, and meaning the journey that my path has been the best thing I could ever give myself. Because let me tell you, baby, things don't affect you when you can't be triggered. When you let go, let God and release and surrender, you cannot be triggered. Baby, let me tell you, most people are upset because they so triggered because they still holding on to something that happened in 1965. And let me tell you, we hold on to the pain because we feel, I think that I'm starting to believe, being a counselor or a transformational life coach, what I'm finding is that people want to hold on to that story because they are addicted to the whatever it gets when they tell that story. We got to stop being addicted to the story and let it go, because in order for us to be up level our life, you got to let go, release and surrender. And the one thing that I heard somebody talk about today is control. Let me tell you, when you really understand that love brought you here, you don't have no control.
Yep.
You let go and surrender to that big L, to the Most High. Let me tell you, when you surrender to the presence of the purpose that you came here for this planet for, and you came for love. Believe me, everything that's happening to us, it didn't happen for us. It happened for us to return back to love. The only journey here is to return back to love, and forgiveness is a part of that. Now, I know it seems a little harsh that, I've heard the stories of many people, and yes, it's hard to get through some of that. But the real lesson for us is to get back to love.
Absolutely.
And we got to let it go in order to soar into the greatest version of ourselves. And so I just wanted to say, forgiveness is the gift that we give ourselves.
Absolutely, Janine. Thank you, Janine. Thank you.
Yes.
See, you had to say that. Yes, that forgiveness thing. It absolutely is.
Baby, you said it best last week. It's the hard thing.
It's the heart. It has to be in the heart. And you can't, even if you think about it, you don't have any funny feelings.
Right.
That's the thing. You can think about it and smile and not feel hurt.
Yeah.
That's when you know that it's gone.
Yes.
You eat something, you burp, and you still taste it.
Yeah.
Do you
can't taste it anymore?
Do you think that we hold on to things because subconsciously we feel that we deserve to be hurt at some level, or that we have identified with the hurt on some level, and if we do truly forgive, we give up our feeling that we have associated with it? Because I wrote down, when Janice was speaking, I wrote down things about each of you as you were speaking. And what I wrote down about Janice, I just wrote perfect love. And then I wrote, because she learned no longer to trust the pain.
Wow.
Okay.
And that's what I wrote, Janice, when you were speaking. Yes, I'm sorry, Lisa.
No. Go ahead and finish your thought.
And so when you spoke about stepping outside of that hurt and looking for that pain to come from different people, same pain, was when you experienced being open to believe that you would attract true love. But as long as you were learning to trust the pain, you couldn't step into that.
Exactly. And it all goes back to, also, you have to become a different person, because the Janice who stayed in the pain and endured it and thought she was being a martyr and
Come on.
It was a good thing. This is what a good woman does. That Janice, it was scary to come out of that, because then I was going to have to get into a different reality. And find a different part of me that I was not acquainted with. It may have been in there, but I was not acquainted with it. I was not comfortable with living that. And I'm still learning to walk in these new shoes, to toddle around in these new high heels, but I think that stops a lot of people. And it's easy to get in your comfort zone. Now, you don't like the mistreatment and the abuse and all the things that are going on, but you're too afraid to step into something different. So you just stay in it for that reason, because the fear of the unknown is greater sometimes than the hatred of the known that you're in. So and I'm still, I think I hear Janine keep saying too, a word, a path, a process, a journey. Yeah. I'm still walking that. And I've got a lot more growth in front of me than I have behind me, but I'm just thankful to be on a different path, on a different journey now.
My thing is, though, I want to cycle back to something, because I know Janice touched on it, but this whole thing about forgiveness. The forgiveness is definitely for us, but a lot of people confuse forgiveness with giving that person another opportunity. We say forgiving.
Come on.
You don't forget it, then you haven't forgotten. I'm sorry, but part of it, when we were kids, and they told us, children, hate to use kids because we don't have animals, we got children, and they tell us not to put our hands on the stove. Well, we do it anyway, and we get burned and all of this stuff. We're going to have a sensory memory of that pain enough, even though we forgive the stove for burning us, but we're not going to forget what it is able to do. And a lot of people feel, and the family members feel, oh, that happened in the past, we just let it go. Letting it go and forgiveness is two different things.
Yes.
Number one. Yes. But it also doesn't mean you set yourself up and put yourself up in the line of fire for it to happen again and again. And that means, and that will mean, love is an inside job. Loving yourself first. It means also not putting yourself in a position with family members, with friends who have not learned to love themselves enough not to hurt you.
Hurt people.
And you should not allow anyone to guilt you. There are times you may have to miss a family meeting. And there was something in my niece's book, Lady of Jeffrey Manor. She said the time for children to sit at the same table with men or whoever who have hurt and molested them is over. Because we as women have to start learning to protect ourselves, but also to protect our children. When we don't love this, that means it comes on our children or whatever. But that forgiveness thing, do not confuse that with a proof of it has to be that you have to be put in that position again or be in the face of that person again because you've forgiven them. Sometimes you've got to give that unconditional love at a different distance because that's where that love comes from. You said it's something about protecting yourself, but there's a lot of people who confuse forgiveness with wiping the slate clean for that person. You can give yourself a clean slate. You don't have to give them a clean slate. Your slate is clean. You've forgiven it, but that doesn't mean that you have to prove to everybody that you've done this certain thing by putting yourself in that position once again. To do it again because they've shown you who they are.
Right.
You know that. And that person who is telling you to leave it in the past and you all let bygones be gone and let make up, they haven't experienced what you've experienced. So they can easily say that from the outside. You have to be able to love yourself on the inside enough to say, I love you, but I am going to love myself more.
And I think sometimes we have to forgive ourselves for those situations where you were old enough to know not to touch the stove. We have to forgive ourselves for touching the stove. So many times we want to forgive the stove for burning us, but you'll continue to end up at stoves until you learn to forgive yourself for having a need to touch the stove. And so we're talking about love being an inside job. Sometimes that forgiveness is an inside job as well. Forgiving yourself. Janine and I had touched on this when this first started, and I have you to talk about it, Janine, when you said when you had gone to the museum, where you were face to face with your vagina and realizing that y'all knew we were going back there, right? Y'all just didn't know where. Okay, I'm just making sure. I'm making sure because y'all didn't just show up because, okay. But where you had to come to this point to where, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I had sensed you saying was that you had to forgive yourself for not even trusting yourself with yourself to step into that power, that power of being feminine, that power of giving your vagina that place that it was supposed to have in all of your being. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Well, I absolutely want to say thank you for, again, bringing that back up. But because forgiveness is an inside job. And I wanted to say thank you so much for even saying that, because forgiveness is an inside job. And forgiveness is the gift that we give ourselves. The thing that I think that's important here in understanding is the release is about the triggers that triggers us. And that's the thing that happened when I went to there's levels to forgiveness. We go through this first, we understand, but I didn't always understand that forgiveness had levels to it. I may could forgive you and look at it and speak to you or whatever, but then there was some things I was still harboring. And so when I went to the vagina workshop, the one thing that I learned in that was that there's a release because the cells have memory. See, I may have forgiven you in my mind, but my vagina.
Come on, Betty. Come on, Betty Jr.
Right. I may have forgiven you in my mind, like Betty said, but my vagina, she said the heart. I'm gonna tell you, my vagina remembered the molestations and all the time. Even I allowed somebody to enter into my space that didn't deserve me, who didn't deserve what I was giving them.
Yeah.
And one thing I realized in that right then moment, that there was levels to forgiveness, because I thought I had forgiven, but it was in that right now moment that I remember my cells remember that molestation, that rape, that everything, and that I could see in the very mirror when we were looking in the mirror and we was writing our forgiveness letter to our vagina, I could see the releasing of the pain, of the memories of those things that had happened inside of my cell walls, in that room that was being held in so tightly that space was being cleared out in that right then moment.
Wow.
It's a very powerful experience. But then I realized that forgiveness there's levels to it. First you forgive, and then you have to get it out the cells and the memory of the pain. Like you ever had something happen to you, like maybe a car accident, as soon as the car, you jump. Now the car not gonna hit you. It's just because it.
Oh, Lisa.
Of the pain and everything off the cell walls of your mind, your body, and in these cells. So that's the level that happened when we was in that vagina workshop. When I went in there, I realized she had us do this forgiveness work because it had to come out the memories of the cells of my body, the cells of my womb, the cells of my heart and my mind.
Wow.
Now, do you feel that by flooding yourself with love, self-love, not selfish love, but self-love, we have the ability to flush out those pains, those triggers, those places that other things could come latch on? Because even if we forgive ourselves and that space is empty, it's susceptible for the same thing to come back. So then what's that next step? And Betty, will bring you in for this one, because when you were speaking about that forgiveness and getting to that point where you had to forgive, something else had to take place or you would have been perpetually stuck in that place. What did you do next that gave you the strength to move past even the forgiveness?
I think it's growth. I think it's personal growth, spiritual growth, And just getting closer to God, understanding that even though this was not a comfortable time in my life, that my feelings was not of God at that point. You know, I didn't want anything to do with him, and he could not do anything for me and our child, not my child. But here he was going into having to dialyze himself, sickle cell anemia. It must have been really tough for him, realizing that, you know, my health is not good. And so the least I can do is provide for my child. But here's a woman that's saying, I don't want it. I don't need it. You know, what kind of woman was I? So you understand? I had to look and say, if the shoe was on the other foot, how would it feel? Right. And after I started looking at it that way, then I had to really forgive all that he did. But I also had to forgive the fact that I had tried to close the door on him trying to make it up in the only way that he knew how. So a lot of times when we look at where we're holding a grudge, we also have to look at why we're holding a grudge. Right. Why we're holding on to something that's not even comfortable for us. Or productive. And I think that once we understand the situation, and we may not ever understand the total situation, but we have to find a way that we are not chained to bitterness. Because that becomes bitter, and when you're bitter, you can't get better. Right. So that we have to unleash that bitterness, regardless to what's causing it, whether it's someone causing it to you or you causing it for yourself. And that, I think that's what I had to do, and that's why I said it's not forgiveness of the mind, it's got to be forgiveness of the heart. And Janine remembered that statement, but it was really an awakening for me. So when I tell that story so many times, it allows other people to understand. Just release it. Now, yes. Would I go back into that again? No. Not go back into that situation again. You know, but when something happens, regardless of what it is, I have to analyze it and say, you know, what's good in this? Because there's in everything, there's good. Everything there's good. Everything. Even the lust, Janine. Everything that's good.
Just for the record, I've been married 38 years.
So what we have to do is find the good in it. Yes. And for those who want to know all of Miss Betty's story, I think Lisa just put the link in for her book. It is powerful, her story. So please go purchase her book. But Sister Sesfala, when we're talking about growth, can you walk us through that process and where that fits in on the subject of self-love or it being an inside job?
I think when we talk about forgiveness, which is the master healer, it takes us through growth. And also, you were talking a little bit, you asked the question about, I think it was about being kind of addicted. You may have not used the word addicted, but being addictive to those situations that keep us in that cycle of repeating the same thing over and over again. And I think when we start doing forgiveness and self work with ourselves, we release ourselves from that. We decrease the need to repeat those relationships that are no longer good for us. We release the need to be on jobs that we don't like. We release that need because we start working with ourselves. And forgiveness to me is the master healer. And as Denise said, you go through different steps with, but when you start, as you open yourself up, God just takes over. He just begins to talk to you, that still small voice just leads and guides you to whatever you need to go. To going to a workshop on healing the vagina, to going to a workshop where you meet a teacher, to going to a workshop where you may do anything. But when you start that, it opens you up. It opens you up for God to take over. And that's where we grow, because we continue to forgive and to release and allow the love to go in. When we release and forgive, love takes over. It fills those spaces. That's what I think anyway.
Yes. At what point, for anyone, at what point did you realize that it was not your responsibility to make your partner happy or for your partner to make you happy? And at what point did you realize that you were the responsible one for that?
I think that's to me, and it's been an ongoing journey. You know, at first when you get married and you're young, you think that because socialization and through the life and the culture of the family that you're brought up, you look for that knight in shining armor or that kind of stuff. But as you begin to work on loving yourself, as you begin to work with other people, as you begin to understand, it's up to you. It's up to you to love yourself. And as you love yourself, you and your partner has to grow too. When you grow, people around you grow. They can't do anything but grow. They either grow or they move
go.
They move on. They move on.
Just and so you
go.
Learn that, and you learn that, and both of you begin to move to love ourselves individually, so we can love the partner even more so, but not depending on them to make us happy. But it all just happens. It just happens as it goes, and you both grow.
Lisa's got a hand up.
You know why this is so amazing? One of the men that another guy that I invited to be on the panel, because we have an all male panel on Sunday, he just dropped out saying, moral of the story, because he just is trying to get he said, I can't be on the panel because I'm trying to get my house in order, so I'm not able to join the discussion. And for better or worse, my time must be spent saving that which I have built instead of fronting and advising about it. I don't want to be that hypocrite advising on relationships when mine needs work. Wish me luck. And then he said, the moral of the story is we men need to know that you never stop learning about your partner, how she has evolved, and how your support needs to evolve accordingly. That he really needs to be on the panel, because he needs to say that.
Yes. Sometimes the best advice is when you're going through that very test that you are talking about.
Yes.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Somebody else was going to address.
You know what? I just want to say this doggone children's stories is the one that messed us up. You know, that happy ever after, the romantic. You think, oh, I'm gonna grow up and I'm gonna have this, and that messed us up.
Yep.
But it wasn't the Van Zandt book. I'll never forget. I was a salesperson back in the day, and I was in my 20s. And so we would leave our sales meeting on Saturday and go over to the metaphysical bookstore. My girlfriend Portia would get 5-6 books, and I always got books on making money, being number one, making money, being number one. But she had this one book I wanted to read, but she said, no, you got to read this book. I'm like, who is she going to tell me what I got to read? So she like, if you want to read this one, then you got to read this one. It was Ayanna Van Zandt, The Value in the Valley. A black woman's guide through drama. I said, girl, you know, I don't do no drama. Everybody who knows Janine know I don't do drama. So I don't read nothing about no black woman's guide through drama. She said, no, and she was adamant. So I said, okay, I'm gonna take the book home and act like I read it. And of course, the nerd I am, I end up reading it. And that's when I realized the first thing in there said, nobody's responsible for putting the stars in your sky.
Come on now.
Shut up.
What does she mean by that? And what does she mean? I'm the one responsible for my own self when he did this to me. So I'm going through this whole thing about and she said, oh no, she made me realize in that book, it changes the trajectory of how I moved and had my being, of how I even started to work within and navigating my relationship. Because I had to check myself. When I went into Spirit had to check me, because I would have said, oh, he did. Spirit said, but no, check yourself first. And so it was there that I had to realize that nobody was responsible for putting the stars in my sky but me.
Come on.
Janine, you know what? In my previous marriage, and we were talking about putting the stars in your sky, I was so invested in healing the broken little boy in my ex-husband. I was pouring all of me into healing that, but there was nobody addressing the broken little girl inside of me. And there had to come a point, I guess when I had to realize what you're saying, I'm putting all the stars, or trying to put all the stars in his constellation, and mine was a Death Star dying out, because I did not think that I was worthy of that, but I needed to consider myself and my brokenness important enough to address it and do the hard work for that. I like what you said about that, though.
And do you all see how we just came back full circle yet again?
Yeah.
We started out talking about those broken places that if we align ourselves with other broken people, they end up taking what little we have. And now we're left even with a bigger deficit, because we have this false belief that if we could just get someone broken and heal them, then they'll in turn heal us, because we attract who we are.
That's true.
And
that's true.
So often we think we attract what we want. We think if we could just put it out in the universe enough, God send me this, and we go into this whole thing of writing out the list of what they're going to be. My sister, you're going to attract exactly what you are. Sorry. When you are whole and healed, you attract that. When we are broken and bruised, we attract that. And we've gone full circle in understanding that it's not media, it's not what is being put out in society about us. It's about who we see ourselves as. We have a responsibility to shore up those places that we know are in deficit. We have a responsibility to, as Lisa said, if we find ourselves crying, then guess what? You're a big girl. Go into the kitchen and cook yourself something to eat. Stop sitting there crying, wanting to be fed. Go get something to eat. And if you ain't got nothing to eat, call it a fast and keep it moving. And so we have that ability within us. And I believe in the end, when we get to that place as women and we understand the power that entails, and we realize that we have that ability, and Janine and I started with it, we're talking about the power of our voice, of our mouth, of our words, and it was correlated with the power of the vagina, that place that life takes place. And it's in our words that we speak the life that we will live. And so when we get past that point of looking at our bodies as being the symbol in that space, sexually, relationally, all those leads to fix our ships, that we realize that it's in the words that we speak first to ourselves, and then the words that we believe in our hearts, and the words that we think upon with our minds, that will manifest into the world that we experience. And Lisa, I know you have some words that you want to share. I feel it coming from you.
Yeah, actually, because I only allowed it to go over a little bit because of that break that we took in between. So it is actually time to wrap up. So I want to make sure that everyone has time to give parting words, as well as how people can keep connected with you on social media or Facebook, your website, all of that. I'm going to drop some of this You can drop it in the chat. If you have your website and everything, you can just go ahead and drop it so everybody can have it. I did put the links to everyone's books into the chat. So we're going to start around. First of all, I want to thank my lovely co-host for she had the questions and everything that came. Some of these questions came from tribe members who wanted to chime in on the panel to make sure that questions were how can I say, presented that would spark a wonderful discussion. So that's, this is part of the reason why we're even having this, is because of her talk. Everything that transpired in the cavalcade, that whole thing that came up, the vagina monologues that came up, or dialogue that came up. And then when Betty was talking about those things, yes. And my minister could not be here. Sesfala is my minister. She couldn't be here the day because it was during church time. So her thing about forgiveness and love, she's always teaching love. And then Janice is love in a walking testimony to that of when it finds you, or when you start loving you, and it opens yourself up to have the love that you deserve. And that's what, so I'm going to start with Janice. You get some parting words. First is parting words to our attendees, and then where people can find you.
Parting words is the biggest thing, because I am yet learning this, is not to be afraid of love, and not to be afraid to come out of whatever you are used to. I was used to darkness. I was used to being mishandled and mistreated. Don't spend all your life being afraid of that and afraid to make a change. It's scary, because I'm a scary person, but I did it. You can do it. So don't be afraid to love yourself, to ask God how to help you to love you the same way that He loves you. And I can be found online, Janice M. Allen. Thank you so much for everything, Lisa.
You're welcome. Okay, so Janine.
I want to say thank you, Lisa. Janice, I love what you just said. I believe I think that the thing that you just said is so powerful. Ask God, ask your heart, ask your inner self how, because everybody talks about love, but I remember when God told me, I was sitting in the middle of the bed, you got to love you. And I'm like, I ain't never been loved. What that look like? I don't even know what that is. And I remember years before that, I was walking down the street, didn't know nothing about what crystals and all that stuff. And I would have told you, lady, put some rocks on me. And she told me when she came out her trance that I was going to teach love. I wouldn't have never, I'm like, that's lady crazy. And so I'm like, what is love? And every time somebody told me I needed to love me, I didn't know what love was. What do you mean, love you? I thought I was loving me when I got my hair done, my nails. But I want people to really understand that when you leave this, if you don't take nothing away from here, place your hand on your heart and ask your inner self, your God self, your higher self, your most powerful part of you. How can I love me more? And I'm going to leave you with a quote that George Washington Carver said. He said that somebody asked him, how could he take these plants and make so many wonderful things out of it? He said, when you love something enough, it will reveal its secrets to you. I thought to myself, if I could love me enough, how can my secrets of myself be revealed to me? I'm going to tell you right now, love is the most greatest revolutionary act you can do on this planet. And when you love you, you will discover the most precious, most worthy, most powerful, greatest. And if it's some more words I would add it to, I don't got much time, but you will find the most powerful part of you by just loving you and learn it. But you got to learn what love is. So I just want to say thank you. Love is an inside job, and you ain't been loved till you've been loved by you. And I'm gonna leave you with my word.
They got a word for that, Jenny.
You ain't been loved till you've been loved by you. That's that word.
Love that, Janine.
Indeed. Daddy?
I was thinking of a story that I told a couple of weeks ago about this young lady went to her dad and he said, all these things going wrong with me, and I'm breaking up with my boyfriend, and my finances is bad. And the dad was a chef. He said, he took her to the kitchen. He says, I'm going to show you a potato. I'm going to show you an egg. I'm going to show you some coffee ground. You know the story?
I
And
love it.
so he said, if I put this hard egg in this water, but the inside is soft, it's going to get hard. And if I put this hard potato where the inside is hard in hot boiling water, it's going to get soft. But when I put the coffee grinds into the water, the coffee grinds changes the water. And as I told that story, I said what we have to learn to do is allow our love to be like coffee grinds. Where whatever situation we are in, let's change the situation. Yes. Rather than get hard like an egg or soft like a potato. Let's change the water and allow our love, wherever the situation is, to be like coffee grinds. I can be found at bettyclawson.com. Facebook is Betty R. Clawson. IG is Betty R. Clawson. Twitter is Betty R. Clawson. You can find me. And 8501 South Green Street at Dudley College.
Right. That's really funny, because that's how I programmed her into my phone. Home is actually the school number, because she's almost always there. You do a spiritual devotion every day, or?
Every Thursday on Facebook. And we just started Facebook, I think, when we were sheltering in place. I did it on Periscope. It's called the Thursday Morning Abundance Now Study Group. And you don't ever get to see me, because I always have a panel that they read, and then I talk about it. I do that every Thursday morning on Facebook Live and Periscope.
Okay. And there are people, I've been getting texts and everything from people. Victoria Adams Kennedy said it was deep, but I like the way it brought women together who seemed to be from different backgrounds over a common bond. It was real Black, and I mean that in the best way. I love how we come together. It's very moving. And Lisa Watson said, it's been a wonderful panel discussion. Such a lot of great nuggets for the listeners. This was a very good blend of women. So yeah, that's one of the tribe members speaking. So, Sesfala.
I mean, I loved everything everybody said. I'm almost speechless. And I guess what I would want everybody to take away is forgiveness is the key. And forgiveness is love, because as you forgive, you love. You know, in the Bible, it tells us to forgive and continue to forgive. You know, it says 70 times 7. Which is just to let you know that you continue to work on forgiveness. But as you continue to work on forgiveness, the part of you that releases and let go, the love of God just takes over, and that the love of God just starts speaking to you through books, through people, through that still small voice, through your prayers. You're walking down the street. You know, once I was driving on the expressway, and I was really going through something, and I was just saying, okay, God, I really need an answer. I really need an answer to this. And this truck drove up and got in front of me, and it had these big words, G-O-D, guaranteed on-time delivery. And God was saying, I'm always on time. And then when we allow God to come into our heart, when we allow ourselves to forgive and to let go and to release, God is always has been there. But because we're working on forgiveness, we just see more and more of who God is. And that love shows up all around us. People out of nowhere comes to help us. Whatever we need, we can think about it, and it just comes. So I just want us to realize that forgiveness will help to stop those relationships that continue to be cycling, that don't seem to be doing you any good. Forgiveness, because we forgive ourselves and we forgive others. And it moves us to the higher and higher states of where God is, that will work with us like never before. Wow. I love all of you women.
Indeed. Thank you so much. For Lorenza, before I have the final part, close up, go ahead and give your final words, as well as where people can find you.
Yes. So my final words is everything that I tell myself every day. There's two times that I am most like Christ: when I forgive and when I love. And so I challenge you to implement that in your life, no matter what your decisions are. I coined a quote. It's been now about 12 years. And it says that although I don't understand God's methods, I will never doubt his motive, for his plans is to do me good and no harm. And so there are times, my sister, in which you may doubt the method that's being used to bring about this transformational change in your life, but never doubt the motive of the Father, which Janine has so beautifully said it, which is to bring you to a place of love. And you can find me at Florenza Denise Lee on Facebook. Florenza Lee on Instagram, Florenza Lee on Twitter. My website is florenza.org. And you're looking for a beautiful children's book, you may find them anywhere books are sold online. Just put in Florenza and they'll pop up.
Indeed, indeed. I love that statement that you made, that I'm most like Christ in two ways, when I forgive and when I love. And I'm sorry, the first thing that came to my mind is, well, I'm more like Christ when I'm turning over tables and going off.
That too.
Yeah, I know, right? I like
That's why we are so good together.
Everybody thinks that he's so holy or whatever, but there's sometimes he turned up a little bit. So I'm like, yeah, that now I can see somebody like that. I can follow that. But my parting words is, number one, I thank everyone who took time this evening to come out, the attendees to come and listen. We held ground all night. Thank the women of the panel who took time out of their evening to come and share this wisdom and have this conversation, this, as I call it, the female town hall. And it was because the thing is, we worked talking about the inside. And on Sunday, the men are going to be talking about the outside, the racism, reality, and relationships. So they're going to come from the outside. But tomorrow night is the masquerade party online. And tomorrow we have fun. So in between, we got the wisdom, have fun, more wisdom, and something for everyone all this weekend. But for me, I mean, tonight, I thank you all for showing up for me and standing in the gap. He's in the exam room right now, and they're just trying to, I'm going to see perfect, whole, and complete. This is the second time this week in the emergency room. So my thing is, there's that faith test a little different when it hits your doorstep. You understand what I'm saying? That faith gets tested quite different when it's something that is that close to your heart. In the sense, at first, I was praying, Lord heal. And the next thing I had to say, no, Lord, whatever your will is, give me the strength. Give me the strength, because my will might not line up with God's will, but we're going to see everything up until whatever that will is, that everything is perfect, whole, and complete. And I appreciate each one of you all standing in the gap for me and holding me up at this point. Because without you guys, I couldn't have continued this. I would have had to click off, and I would have had to go somewhere, and I didn't have a chance to do that. And I'm still uplifted by this entire experience. And I'm hoping that the panelists, not just the panelists, but the attendees also felt this kind of thing. They can see that this was an inside job. You all were my love. You all were my love, because you all held me in that love. And it took you coming outside of yourself to hold me in that process, in that point in time. So I thank you for that. I can be found at NelenaKai.com, everywomanneedsawife.com, opendoormarriage.com. Those are titles of my book. I write some very interesting stuff. I'm on Instagram as Nelena Kai. I'm going to drop, www. Thank you so much, Jen. She put it in the group for me. But because this is going to be online, Nelena is spelled NALEIGHNAKAI, NelenaKai.com. We thank you guys for spending the evening with us. We bid you peace, prosperity, abundance, grace, mercy, all of the good things that the Creator has in store for you, your family, your children, your children's children, and everyone around you. May God and the Creator go before you in all of your ways, in all of your endeavors. And as I said before, and make the crooked way straight, so your path is sure, your path and your purpose is final, You have everything that you need and all the people and the resources that you need to further along in your purpose and in your path. And so it is.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Love you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you for coming. Good
Good
night, everyone.
night.